Hi, everyone. So this video is going to be the introduction to our language and identity unit. So we are writing three writing projects. We have three writing projects to complete this semester, each on a different topic. The first one's going to be language and identity. The second one is going to be food and identity. And the third one is going to be AI and work. And so for the language and identity, this video, I just want to give you an idea of what it is that we're going to be talking about, and one of the reasons why I think this is important. One of the things that we oftentimes think about when we're thinking about writing in an English class is making sure that we're using the correct grammar, that we're doing things in the in what seems to be the appropriate way. And one of the things I think is important to recognize about language is that there is not necessarily a correct language. There's no one way that we are supposed to use language. There are all kinds of different dialects, and one dialect is not better than another. Um, Really, what's happening is that the people who have decided what is the correct grammar, what is the correct way to use the language, those are people who have money and power. They're the kind of people who wrote the grammar books, and they said, this is what the grammar is supposed to look like. That's how we should speak. If we had other people writing grammar books, our grammar would be very different. And it's a really important thing to keep in mind because there is this sense in which we think, wait, there's this right way. English has this correct way of doing things. But that's really not the case. There are all kinds of different ways. The rules of English are constantly changing. One of the things that I do cut out for time is, being able to give you anecdotes about this. And so if I had more time, I would give you stories about ways in which the language has changed, even within my lifetime. Things that people used to say are correct or no longer correct, or people that used to say are incorrect or no longer incorrect. Those things change all the time. And that is, in fact, how language itself develops. English comes from German, and really it's just German spoken by people who didn't know how to speak German too well, right? There are people who would have been looking at English when it was first being developed and say, how come you're speaking your German all wrong? And then people come along and say, well, now we call this thing English, and here are the rules for that. But again, here's the rules for that particular time by these particular people. But things are always changing. And I want us to keep that in mind because I will be looking at certain kinds of grammatical rules here. I'm going to be marking those kinds of things on some of your writing projects. But I want you to recognize that what I'm doing is saying this is the standard, right? And I'm putting it in quotes here, this is the standard language that we use. This is what is seen as acceptable in professional workplaces and in educational kinds of situations like that. But that doesn't mean that it is correct in the big sense. It is just what we'd use in this situation. And people will judge us if we use certain kinds of language in certain kinds of situations. If we use non professional language in professional situations, people might judge us for that. And that's something that I want to make sure that you're aware of because I want you to be able to go into a professional situation and not be judged. But I also want you to be aware of the fact that there is something arbitrary about that. That's not the hard and fast rule. Those things are changing, and there are other ways that we can think about language. And the reading that we have, mother tongue, I'm going to do a pre-reading video for that you'll need to watch. The videos that you're going to be watching about code switching are going to talk about that. Code switching, it's going to be explained in the videos, but just to give you a little bit of a preview, code switching is the ability of people to move between different languages and dialects whenever they see fit, sometimes within the same sentence and in various situations. If you are bilingual, and let's say you speak Spanish sometimes, and then you can turn around and speak to somebody in English, you're code switching. Sometimes we do that with dialect. We might have certain kinds of dialects that we use, certain ways that we might speak to our friends, and then we might turn around and speak to our parents in a different dialect. That's code switching as well. Those videos are going to talk about that. There's a Key and Peele sketch that talks about that, which I think is kind of amusing to give you a sense of that. And just to recognize that it's something that we do all of the time. And then we can think about how that relates to our lives, what it means for us to have to switch from these different kinds of languages. Amy Tan's Mother Tongue is going to talk about that in ways that are sometimes funny and sometimes not very funny at all. They can cause potentially some serious problems if people feel that we are speaking an incorrect language in certain kinds of places. So watch those videos and begin to understand something about that. And I want you to start to think about your own language background. Think about what kinds of language you use in different situations. Again, how you speak to your friends versus how you speak to your parents or grandparents, or how you speak in an academic setting. All of those things might be very different. Even among your friends, you might have different forms of language that you might use. You might change that up. And that's okay. We all do that on some level. And so I want us to begin to think more consciously about the kinds of languages that we use and why, and then be thinking about what that says about who we are, where some of those things come from. So watch those videos. Then you'll watch the video, the pre-reading video for Amy Tan, and then for next week, read the Amy Tan essay, and that will give us a sense of how we can think about some of those things.